Why do Chinese people speak so loudly in public? And why do Japanese people stay so quiet even in a crowd? Is one way smarter than the other? Or is there something deeper behind the volume? Around the world, travelers notice this contrast. On planes, trains, and streets, volume speaks louder than language. In many Western countries, both Chinese and Japanese tourists stand out. But for very different reasons. Chinese voices are often bold, energetic, and public. Japanese voices are soft, careful, and reserved. It's easy to assume one is rude and the other polite. But culture is rarely that simple. Maybe loudness is strength, maybe quietness is wisdom, or maybe both come from fear just expressed in different ways. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about what loud and quiet mean in different societies, and what those meanings reveal about power, pride, and peace. So let's begin with something simple. What does it actually mean to be loud or quiet? Section 1. What loud and quiet mean in daily life? Why do we notice loud and quiet people so quickly? Because sound demands attention, and silence, too, has a presence. In many parts of the world, being loud can mean confident, friendly, even honest. But in others, being loud can be seen as rude, aggressive, or selfish. In China, speaking loudly in public is common, not because people are trying to be rude, but because it's normal to show emotion, speak openly, and take space. In Japan, the opposite is true. Speaking softly is not just polite's expected. Public quietness is seen as maturity, respect, and awareness of others. A Chinese family in a restaurant might talk, laugh, and express freely. A Japanese family might eat in near silence, out of consideration for those nearby. Neither is right or wrong, but both behaviors tell us something about the culture behind them. Does loudness mean confidence, or lack of control? Does quiet mean wisdom, or social pressure? Here's something to think about. In your country, when someone enters a room and speaks loudly, do you respect them more, or less? Now imagine someone who speaks softly, pauses to listen, and avoids interrupting others. Do you see them as weak or wise? How we react tells us something about what our own culture values. Because volume isn't just about voice. It's about emotion. It's about identity. And often, it's about power. Section 2. The Chinese perspective. Loudness as pride and presence. In Chinese culture, speaking loudly isn't rude. It's normal. It shows confidence, energy, and sometimes care. When someone speaks loudly, it means they're engaged. They're involved. They're emotionally present. In many Chinese families, silence means disconnection. But sound means you care. You're part of the moment. Loudness is not seen as dominating. It's expressive. It shows you have a voice. That you exist. That you're not afraid to be seen or heard. In a crowded market, a Chinese vendor calls out proudly. In a dinner with friends, people talk over each other without offense. The volume isn't chaos, it's life. Historically, too, voice mattered. When millions lived in tight quarters, speaking up was a way to be heard, to survive, to lead. Modern China carries this habit forward. In classrooms, meetings, even online, those who speak loud are often seen as capable and trustworthy. To Western ears or Japanese it may seem intense, but within China, volume means presence, and presence means value. So here's the question. If no one hears you, do you matter? In Chinese thinking, being loud is how you prove you do. But is that the only way to show value? Or just one kind of strength? Let's turn now to Japan and explore how quietness became a cultural virtue. Section 3. The Japanese perspective. Quietness as maturity and respect. In Japan, being quiet is not weakness. It's a sign of strength, of discipline, of maturity. From childhood, Japanese people are taught to be aware of others, to avoid disturbing the group, to speak only when necessary and only with care. In a Japanese classroom, silence is not awkward. It's respectful. It means students are listening. In a train, people speak in low voices or not at all. Even phone calls are avoided, out of respect for strangers nearby. In Japan, the less noise you make, the more you are trusted. because it shows you understand the unspoken rules. Silence is not emptiness, it's awareness, it's restraint, it's social intelligence. Being loud is often seen as immature or even selfish. It draws attention, it puts your needs above others. But being quiet means you understand the space you're in. You adjust to others, you make room for harmony. Even in business, Japanese professionals often speak slowly, with pauses. They think before responding, because words carry weight and silence does too. In Western culture, silence can be uncomfortable. In Japan, it's a form of communication. It says I'm listening. I respect your words. I don't need to speak over you to be heard. So here's the question. Is quietness a lack of voice? Or is it a deeper kind of voice? In Japan, silence is not the absence of meaning. It's where meaning begins. Section 4: How Westerners Perceive Loudness and Quietness. In Western countries, loudness is not always seen as rude. Sometimes, it's even admired. Speaking up shows confidence. It shows leadership. It tells the world, I'm here, and I matter. In American classrooms, students are encouraged to raise their hands and share opinions. Silence can be misunderstood as weakness or worse, disinterest. In many Western workplaces, being outspoken is seen as proactive. Being quiet may seem passive, or even invisible. But it's not that simple. Westerners can also admire quiet people if their silence feels intentional. Someone who speaks little, but says meaningful things, is often respected. Think of wise characters in movies. They're not loud. They speak slowly, and people listen. In fact, in Europe, especially in countries like Germany or Finland, quietness can be a sign of discipline and intelligence. But volume still matters. If someone talks too quietly, they may be ignored. If they speak too loudly, they may be seen as arrogant. Balance is key. So when Westerners hear Chinese people speak loudly, some admire their boldness, others feel overwhelmed. When they see Japanese people speak softly, some see it as polite and refined. Others feel unsure, wondering what's really being said. To Western ears, volume is part of the message. So here's a question. Is your voice more important than your words? Or are they always speaking together? Understanding this helps explain not only how we sound, but how we connect. Section 5: Emotion and Control. Why loudness can be misread. Let's be honest, loud voices often make people uncomfortable. Not always, but often. Why? Because loudness is often linked to emotion. And emotion, when uncontrolled, can feel threatening. When someone speaks loudly, we might think they're angry even if they're not. We might assume they're aggressive, even if they're just excited. In many cultures, volume and emotion are tied together. The louder you speak, the more emotional you seem. And the more emotional you seem, the less rational you appear. This is why, in quiet cultures like Japan or Finland, loudness is often seen as a loss of control. It's not about what you say. It's about how calmly you say it. When someone speaks softly and slowly, they seem thoughtful, mature, and intelligent. But when someone raises their voice, they may seem impulsive even if their ideas are good. So here's the problem. Loudness can hide meaning. People may ignore your message simply because of your tone. This is a big issue for international communication. What sounds normal in China may feel aggressive in Japan. What feels passionate in America may feel overwhelming in Germany. The same words, the same intent, different volume, different impact. So the question is, do we judge others by what they say or how they sound? And if a loud voice makes people stop listening, is it really powerful or just noisy? Section 6: Are quiet people always wise? Or just afraid to speak? We often say, silence is golden. But is it always true? Is a quiet person always wise, thoughtful, mature? Or could they just be afraid? Afraid to speak, afraid to be wrong, afraid to stand out. In some cultures, staying quiet is a survival skill. In school, at work, even in the family, people learn that silence is safe. Say too much, and you might offend someone. Disagree openly, and you might be punished. So people stay quiet, not because they want to, but because they have to. In Japan, this happens often. Harmony is so important that disagreement is avoided. Even when someone disagrees, they may say nothing. Is that wisdom, or is it pressure? Now, think about this. If someone never shares their ideas, how can we know what they think? If someone stays silent in a meeting, do we assume they agree or that they're hiding something? Silence can be a sign of maturity, but it can also be fear in disguise. In some countries, quietness is misunderstood as disinterest. In others, it's seen as respect. So here's the question for you. When you meet a quiet person, what do you assume? Are they deep or shy? Are they wise or scared? Leave a comment. We want to hear what silence means in your culture. Section 7: Power and Performance when loudness becomes strategy. Not all loudness is emotional. Sometimes, it's strategic. In business, in politics, in entertainment, loudness can be used as a tool, a way to lead, to dominate, or simply to be remembered. Think of famous CEOs, politicians, or public speakers. Many of them speak with strong voices, sharp gestures, bold energy. They're not out of control, they're in full control. They use volume as a performance. They know when to raise their voice. They know how to stir a crowd, win attention, and sound confident. In this case, loudness isn't about emotion, it's about influence. In China, this kind of vocal assertiveness is often encouraged. In schools and business settings, those who speak boldly are respected. They're seen as capable, motivated, even inspiring. In contrast, in Japan, the opposite may be true. Too much assertiveness is seen as pushy, even arrogant. Leaders are expected to show humility, not showmanship. So here's the interesting part. Loudness, when used intentionally, becomes power. But when it's constant and unconscious, it can feel aggressive or tiring. That's the difference. Strategic volume earns attention, but uncontrolled volume demands it. One invites you to listen. The other forces you to. So the question is, are you speaking loud because you have something to say? Or because you're afraid of being ignored? Volume alone isn't power, but knowing how and when to use it, that's influence. Section 8: The Psychology Behind Volume. What loud and quiet reveal about fear. Loud or quiet, both can come from fear, just in different forms. A loud voice might hide insecurity. If I speak louder, maybe no one will notice I'm unsure. A quiet voice might hide anxiety. If I stay silent, maybe no one will judge me. In both cases, the sound is not the truth. It's a mask. Some people raise their voice to feel strong. Others lower their voice to feel safe. One protects the ego. The other protects the heart. In psychology, this is called defense behavior. We change how we speak to protect how we feel. For example, someone who talks too much might fear being ignored. Someone who says nothing might fear being attacked. So when we see a loud person, we shouldn't assume they're confident. And when we see a quiet person, we shouldn't assume they're weak. Both may be trying to survive, just in different ways. In cultures like China, where competition is intense, a loud voice can be a shield, a way to stand out and not disappear. In cultures like Japan, where harmony is key, a quiet voice is a shelter, a way to avoid conflict and stay safe. But both come from the same place, a fear of not being accepted. So here's the real question. Is your voice protecting you or expressing you? Are you loud to be seen? Or quiet to disappear? Or can you find a voice that does both? Strong enough to be heard, and kind enough to be welcomed? Section 9: Silence and Trust. Why we feel safe around quiet people. Why do we feel safe around quiet people? Because they don't demand attention. They don't rush to speak. They give space. In a world full of noise, silence feels like relief. When someone speaks softly, we lean in. We listen more closely. Quiet people often observe before reacting. They choose their words. They wait until they really have something to say. That creates trust, because we know they're not speaking to impress. They're speaking because it matters. Silence can feel like respect. It says, I see you. I don't want to overwhelm you. It creates calm, and calm builds connection. In Japan, this is deeply understood. In business meetings, in classrooms, in family settings, silence is not a gap. It's a message. It says, let me think. I respect your opinion. I want to listen. Even in conflict, quietness can soften tension. When one person stays calm, the other feels less attacked. This is why in many cultures, especially in Asia, the quiet person is often trusted most. Not because they say much, but because they say only what's needed. So here's a thought. Maybe silence isn't the absence of noise. Maybe it's the presence of care. And in a noisy world, maybe care is the rarest sound of all. Section 10. In the end, who sounds smarter? So after everything we've explored, the cultures, the psychology, the emotion, the strategy, we come back to a simple question. Who sounds smarter? The loud voice or the quiet one? It's tempting to choose one. To say loud means power, or quiet means wisdom. But the truth is, sound alone doesn't define intelligence. Context does. In a noisy room, the loud voice leads. In a quiet room, the soft voice speaks volumes. In a business pitch, confidence matters. In a funeral, restraint matters. In a crisis, volume can show control. In a classroom, silence can show respect. So maybe it's not about being loud or quiet. Maybe it's about knowing when to be each. The smartest person in the room isn't the one who speaks most. It's the one who listens well, speaks clearly, and understands the moment. In Japan, quietness often signals emotional intelligence. In China, volume can reflect strength and visibility. Both have value when used with intention. So here's what we've learned. Loud doesn't mean stupid. Quiet doesn't mean wise. But used without awareness, either can become noise. Used with awareness, either can become leadership. So before you judge someone by their volume, listen to their message. And before you decide how to speak, ask yourself, do I want to be heard or understood? Because sounding smart isn't about shouting. And it isn't about silence either. It's about timing, intention, and connection. That's where true intelligence begins. Cultural habits like this may seem small, but they reflect big ideas. How does your culture compare? Let's share and learn from each other. Leave a comment if you'd like. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.